In 2019 now, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, directed and written by Quentin Tarantino, produced by David Hyman, Shannon McIntosh and Quentin. In the cast, and a very strong cast it was too, Leonardo DiCaprio plays Rick Dalton, Brad Pitt is Cliff Booth, Margot Robbie plays Sharon Tate, Emile Hirsch is Jay Sebring, Margaret Qualley Pussycat, and Timothy Oliphant is James Stacy, Dakota Fanning Squeaky, and Bruce Dern plays George Spaling, and we also have Mike Moe as Bruce Lee, and Damian Lewis pops up as Steve McQueen. There is an array of cast members. There will be a cast slide for you to peruse, and of course this movie was highly successful. Brad Pitt won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, and it was nominated in a number of categories. Okay, so let's get on with the movie now. This movie mixes up real life characters with fictional ones. It's a novel idea, that's what I thought anyway, and it's set in 1969 in Los Angeles, and Rick Dalton, played by DiCaprio, is a TV star, and he's been in a number of TV series, a very popular actor. He has to have a stunt double, and Brad Pitt is the character who plays that double, Cliff Booth. His ratings, however, are falling. His agent, played by Al Pacino, is engaged in trying to U-turn his career to get another few bucks, and he suggests that Rick should move into cinema, spaghetti westerns specifically. Hollywood's changing now, and the epic 50s and early 60s westerns with huge panoramic views are out. Movies looked at cowboys in the Wild West as handsome stars with macho-style scripts, and becoming the hero and acting out where there's a baddie, were on the slide, and there was a new sort of Hollywood brewing that reflected through the reality at the time. And of course, this particular movie is set in the shade of the reality of Sharon Stone's immersion in new cinema, and of course the events that took place when she and her family were slaughtered by the Manson family. So anyway, realism was the vogue, and that was what was being sold to Rick Dalton in 1969. At the time, was emerged more in the scripts. Plus there was of course an atmosphere at the time within the hippie era, which was quite a contrast. And movies had to take more risks. Tarantino looks at how these two buddies who work side by side tried to resurrect their careers. The notion of a stuntman was really a dying breed now, an echo of the dying state of Hollywood. And the movie is a mix of reality and fantasy. We witness early on Rick's performances in TV. He plays a bad guy most of the time and a cowboy, and we mix this with the new challenge. The big screen, well, he's not handling that very good. He needs to be encouraged, and he almost has to be taken care of, a little bit like a child. And his stunt double, Cliff, provides much of that support. In the Western, of course, getting to grips with the scripts, Rick doesn't shine, and he makes a real mess of it early on and turns to alcohol misuse, which also reflects in his performance. The film is a comedy, really, a black comedy in part, and we witness very amusing scenes that reflect how bizarre Los Angeles was at the time. An example, a scene involving Booth where he's hanging around, and he then meets a character who just happens to be playing Bruce Lee on the set, and they end up having a bit of a fight, and Bruce Lee ends the boredom of the script by engaging with Cliff. It's quite aggressive, and it's broken up by other members on the set. But it's all rather bizarre, to be sure. And it's indicative of how Tarantino throws in these hilarious scenes. Who could forget a scene in Pulp Fiction when Marvin and Vincent go up to the hotel room? Absolutely laughable, to say the least. The role of Sharon Tate, played by Margot Robbie, is also an interesting one. At the time, Tate was a new breed of actresses, and we see her going and watching herself in her own films as a way of boosting her adrenaline factor and improving her self-image. The movie was actually of a very poor quality, but that didn't seem to matter. In this movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the movie moves slowly towards the pending slaughter, which is always lingering in the background. And we catch some of the followers. But as I say, knowing that as we watch, we're always anticipating when is it going to happen, which is a ploy by Tarantino to keep you on the edge of your seats. There is scene when Cliff returns to his trailer after a day at work. He's got a dog, and the dog's absolutely ravenous. It's a pit bull, and we witness the dog consuming an enormous amount of tinned dog food, and the pit bull gouges into it, into the bowl. It sort of personifies gluttony, which is also much a metaphor of Hollywood. And Tarantino seems to love indulging the viewer in excesses to keep us ticking over. And further down the road, we sum up the atmosphere of the movie when Cliff has some time on his hands, and he picks up a young girl on the highway, quite coincidentally, and agrees to take her back to where she's staying. And the young girl is one of Manson's playthings. And so she takes him back to the actual ranch that the Manson family had used, and Tarantino was using it on his set. And this was used prior to the slaughter. Cliff arrives and finds out that an old friend of his, who was the owner of the ranch, is still there, and he insists on wanting to say hello. But the group, most of the Manson followers, are very reticent about this and actually they try to dissuade this desire by a lot of methods, which irritates Cliff. But eventually he manages to bamboozle his way into the house on the ranch and meets the character, George Spann, played by Bruce Dern. Its character is very much in the latter stages of his life, is going blind, and the scene peters out really to be nothing of any great significance. However, because of the objectionable behaviour of Manson's group in trying to prevent Cliff from seeing George, Cliff carries out some rebuttals on them in the light of the fact that they let his tyres down. And we see a scene where he basically forces one of the followers to change the wheel, and at the time he beats him frequently, and it's a pretty grossly nasty type of scene. But again, that's Tarantino for you. This brutal thumping. We then get to the stage where the scene is set to witness the murders. We're towards the end of the film, and it's no accident that this violence preceded the reenactment of the murders. Although we don't actually see a reenactment, we just get glimpses of what's going on, and we can then put together our own version of the grisly details. a very, very strange movie. Reality versus fantasy is mixed together, and it really helps that perhaps that you were around back in the late 60s and recall the tragedy that took place with regard to the Manson murders. On the other hand, I think for those who weren't, it's probably a disappointment of a movie, because Tarantino doesn't give you the sort of full, gluttonous, gratuitous violence that perhaps you might be wanting. It does, however, clearly show the dramatic changes that took place in Hollywood at the end of the 60s into the early 70s, after the glory days of the 50s. Anyway, so that's my look at Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And if you're a Tarantino film, this is meat and drink for you. You'll not be disappointed.